Sorry that we didn't get to meet last Thursday, and I actually lost the presentation that I was making, so I had to make a new one. I hope it covers everything, but here's a presentation on object creation for the most part. It will handle functions to create objects, inheritance, properties, methods, and instantiation. Object creation functions are simply functions that create objects, and these are defined in the header files of classes. For example, student would just be the base creation function that would just have, it would have all of the variables of a class, but just have them be blank. Or if in your header file you defined them as something when it is just default, then it would just go to that. And you can also, while creating a class or an object, you can define what you want the variables to become based on what variables are already in your program. So you could create a student and then input a string name and an int GPA, for example, for that have already been defined so far in your program. That's pretty much it. And if you guys have any questions, you can just email me in. This is just going to be like a base of everything. But inheritance is when one class inherits the properties and methods of another class. So for example, if any of you guys took CS165 for the Skeet game, we had a flying object class that was used for pretty much every kind of bird, and also I think the bullets. So they would inherit the flying object methods and variables such as position, velocity, direction. I think that might have been part of velocity, and then if after the derived class gets those, they can just use them without even needing to define them in their own class header file. Or if they do define them, they can override them and turn them into unique, more personalized functions. So for example, if you had like a bird advance function for flying objects, it would just set it forward a frame. It could be that you have a crazy bird that would rotate the velocity in like 90 degrees or something every frame, or every 30 frames or something. But you can just override it and make them something else. Properties is, I saw this on the schedule and I wasn't that sure what it was asking for, like class properties. I don't know what that is. I'm thinking that it means what a class is made of, such as like the variables of a class. For example, a student would have a string name variable, could have an int GPA variable. And when you inherit from another class, then you would gain the properties of the old class. So for example, on the last one, there was a little picture of a student inheriting from the person class. So a person has a name, hair color, date of birth, all of that. And a student is a person. So they would inherit all of those properties and variables. And then they would also have variables that are defined just for that class, such as their GPA. Not all persons have a GPA. Not all persons have a student ID. You get the point. But all persons have a name. All persons have a date of birth. All students have a name. All students have a date of birth. I hope that makes sense. Methods are, it's just another way of saying the functions of a class. It's pretty basic. A student would have functions or methods like get name, get GPA, and set GPA. Just a bunch of getters and setters. You could have more advanced functions or methods in your classes, such as a flying object having the advance method or the draw method, so it shows up on the screen. A method's just any function of a class. Instantiation, it's a little difficult to explain. I'm going to read word for word from a Stack Overflow quote. Instantiation is the creation of an instance or particular realization of an abstraction or template, such as a class of objects or a computer process, To instantiate is to create such an instance by, for example, defining one particular variation of an object within a class, giving it a name, and locating it in some physical place. So basically, instantiation is the creation of an object. You have your class, and that class has all of its own properties and methods and variables, but when you instantiate it, then that class has a particular instance. So for example, you could have a student or a student Patrick. Those are instances of that class existing in your program. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. It's not as thorough of a presentation as I had last time, but I was pretty triggered. I lost my old one, so I just threw one together. Anything you think you should elaborate more on, or you want more of an explanation for, I'd be happy to research and get back to you. Thanks.